You are walking home with a useless stone. It cannot cut meat. It cannot crack bone. It cannot keep you warm. It is heavier than almost everything else you own, and every extra gram must be carried by hand across rough ground. Yet something about its color catches your eye. You pick it up anyway. Why? That tiny decision may be one of the oldest recognizably human behaviors preserved in the archaeological record. Stone Age sites are usually introduced through useful things: hand axes, spear points, scrapers, needles, objects that helped your ancestors survive cold, hunger, predators, and injury. But mixed among those tools, archaeologists sometimes find something stranger. A bright pebble with no cutting edge. A crystal with no impact scars. A fossil carried far from the rock where it formed. A shell that held no food and could not have come from the cave where it was found. These objects were transported. Some were kept for years. Some may have crossed entire territories. Yet no clear practical task explains why anyone bothered. Archaeologists often call such an object a manuport. The word simply means a natural object moved from its original location by a human or another hominin. It was carried, but not necessarily manufactured. That sounds almost trivial. It is not. A stone tool tells you that an ancient person understood force, fracture, and function. A useless stone may tell you that the same person noticed beauty, resemblance, rarity, memory, or meaning. How could a pebble reveal something so large? Picture a cave in what is now central Israel around 300,000 years ago. Kesem Cave is filled with the remains of repeated human activity. Animals were butchered there. Flint was shaped there. Fire burned in a central hearth. Every useful object entered a demanding economy. Wood took effort to gather. Meat had to be transported before scavengers found it. Good flint had to be located, broken, and carried. Nothing heavy came home for free. Then archaeologist Ella Asaf examined 17 unusually small flint pebbles recovered from the cave. They were colorful. They were unmodified. They were also smaller than the pebbles selected for ordinary stone production at the site. Most importantly, they showed no traces of use. No pounding. No scraping. No flaking. No obvious task. The people at Kesem knew stone extremely well. They could recognize raw material, choose suitable pieces, and turn them into sharp tools through controlled blows. So the strange pebbles were probably not mistakes made by people who failed to understand flint. They appear to have been selected precisely because they were different. What would that moment have looked like? You are returning from a day outside the cave. One arm carries useful wood. Someone beside you carries part of an animal carcass. Your group has already collected workable flint from sources known across the landscape. Near the path, a small pebble shines against the dust. It has a richer color than the stone around it. It is smooth enough to turn between your fingers. It fits in your palm, but it is too small for the normal work performed with pebbles at the cave. You know that it will not feed anyone. You take it home. Perhaps you place it near the hearth. Perhaps a child reaches for it. Perhaps you give it to someone. Perhaps it simply stays in a corner until sediment covers it. The final act is invisible. The choice to carry it is not. Asaf argued that these pebbles may preserve aesthetic preference, meaning they were noticed and selected for visible qualities rather than economic value. That does not prove that Kesem Cave contained an ancient art collection. It does show that practical efficiency cannot explain every object your ancestors brought into their living space. Would you recognize the same impulse in yourself? A shell from a holiday. A smooth stone from a beach. A ticket from an old journey. A small object that becomes valuable only because of where it came from. The comparison becomes even stranger at Fumin Cave in northern Italy. In a layer associated with Neanderthals, archaeologist Marco Perasani and his colleagues found part of a fossil marine shell called Aspam marginata. The layer is at least roughly 45,000 years old. The shell did not come from a living animal gathered near the cave. It was already ancient when a Neanderthal found it. The nearest fossil exposures currently known to contain that species lie more than 100 kilometers from Fumane Cave. The shell may have moved through several hands, or one person may have carried it during a long journey. Either possibility turns a small object into evidence of a much larger mental landscape. Why transport a fossil so far? Microscopic analysis revealed red hematite, a mineral used as ochre, spread across the shell's outer surface. The researchers rejected the idea that it had served as a normal tool or a container for pigment. They considered it either a curated natural object or a personal ornament, perhaps once suspended and displayed. The answer cannot be recovered with certainty. That uncertainty matters. The shell may have been worn. It may have been handled. It may have been exchanged. It may have represented a place, a person, or a story now completely lost. What survives is a chain of deliberate choices. Someone noticed a fossil shell. Someone picked it up. Someone transported it away from its geological source. Someone covered its surface with red pigment. Someone kept it long enough for rubbing to leave microscopic marks. Then the object entered Fumane Cave. A practical tool usually becomes more valuable when it works efficiently. This shell may have become more valuable because it was rare, distant, old, colored, or connected to a particular person. That is a different kind of technology. It is a technology of attention. Your ancestors did not merely reshape the physical world. They selected pieces of that world and assigned them importance. A fossil could become more than calcium carbonate. A crystal could become more than quartz. A pebble could become more than stone. But archaeologists face a dangerous problem here. Modern eyes are eager to find art, religion, magic, and symbolism everywhere. A strange stone at a campsite may have arrived naturally. A fossil could have been carried inside another rock. An object with no visible wear might still have served a practical task that left no marks. So evidence must be tested carefully. Is the object made from material absent near the site? Does it appear inside a secure archaeological layer? Could water, animals, or geological movement have transported it? Does its surface show pigment, handling, suspension, or modification? Does it resemble other selected objects from the same place? Only after those questions does useless become interesting. And even then, useless is the wrong word. At Wadi Hameh 27 in Jordan, a settlement occupied by Natufian hunter-gatherers more than 14,000 years ago, archaeologists recovered fossils, unusual stones, animal bones, and manufactured art objects. Philip Edwards, Janine Major, Kenneth McNamara, and Rosie Robertson studied how natural forms may have inspired human designs. Some found objects were only slightly changed. Others were transformed. Patterns visible in nature appeared again in created objects. The repeating plates on tortoise shells seem to have influenced visual forms across different materials. Here, collecting was not necessarily separate from making art. It may have been the first step. You notice a pattern before you reproduce it. You preserve a form before you transform it. You carry home the object that keeps pulling your attention back. Could a fossil function like a sketchbook? Not because anyone draws on paper, but because the object stores a shape outside the brain. Its curves can be examined again. Its symmetry can be copied. Its surface can be shown to another person. A collected object can become a portable idea. That possibility changes the meaning of ancient curiosity. Picking up a strange stone is not merely passive appreciation. It can feed invention. It can train attention. It can give a group a shared visual reference. It can also carry social information. Imagine two people meeting after weeks apart. One has traveled through a valley beyond the group's usual range. Instead of describing the landscape only with gestures and words, that traveler produces a strange fossil from the area. The object proves distance. It makes the absent place tangible. It can be touched by someone who never went there. It may become evidence of courage, access, alliance, or belonging. Would the object still be useless? A rare shell can mark identity. A colored stone can become a gift. A crystal can focus a story. A fossil can connect the living to creatures no one has ever seen alive. None of those functions leave a cutting edge. This is the central trap in studying ancient life. Modern categories divide objects into tools, decorations, toys, keepsakes, religious items, scientific specimens, and art. Prehistoric people did not have to divide their world in the same way. A single object could shift between roles during its life. A shell might begin as a curiosity. Then it becomes a gift. Then a pendant. Then a memory of the giver. Then an heirloom. Then something placed beside a fire. Then an archaeological mystery. At which point was it used? The title objects they carried but never used hides the real twist. Some of these objects may never have performed a mechanical task, yet they may have been used constantly in thought, memory, display, teaching, exchange, and storytelling. Their function was not to cut the world. Their function was to change how the world was perceived. That ability has deep evolutionary consequences. Survival depends on noticing what is useful now. Human culture also depends on noticing what might mean something later. A person who collects an unusual object is preserving attention across time. The object can outlast the moment that made it interesting. You can return to it. You can show it. You can compare it. You can attach a story to it. Soon, meaning no longer has to vanish when a conversation ends. Material can hold it. This does not mean every bright pebble was sacred. It does not mean every fossil was understood as the remains of an extinct animal. Ancient people may have interpreted fossils in ways that cannot be reconstructed at all. But recognition came first. They noticed that certain things were not ordinary. That distinction is basic to every museum, collection, archive, jewelry box, trophy shelf, and childhood drawer filled with treasures. The materials change. The impulse remains remarkably familiar. Look around your own space. How many objects are present because they perform an essential task? Now count the rest. A photograph. A souvenir. A gift you rarely touch. An old device you no longer use. A stone, shell, card, figure, or letter that would look worthless to anyone who did not know its story. Carrying those things costs space. Keeping them creates clutter. Losing them can still hurt. Why? Because your mind does not store value only through utility. It stores value through association. An object becomes a handle for a memory, a relationship, a place, or a version of yourself. Ancient people left almost no direct record of such private associations. Words disappeared. Gestures disappeared. Names disappeared. Stories disappeared. Sometimes only the object remained. A red shell in an Italian cave. 17 colored pebbles in Israel. A fossil or unusual stone in a Jordanian settlement. They cannot tell you exactly what they meant. They tell you that meaning existed. So you're walking home with a useless stone. It still cannot cut meat. It still cannot crack bone. It still cannot keep you warm. But now it carries a place, a choice, and a moment of attention. And that may be why you picked it up.